Stu, it's so good to see you. How are you doing?
Great. And I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm excited as well. We've known each other for a long time, and one of the things I love about you is that you take such great care of your clients, women in perimenopause and postmenopause. And I know we've talked a lot, but I really would love to hear a little bit about what has inspired you to want to take care of these beautiful women. And one of the biggest issues I know that they're coming to you with is metabolic issues, that stubborn weight, body composition changes. How has that become the thing that you take care of women with?
Good question. I'm going to try to be concise, but there's two answers to that. The first answer is when I was in high school, freshman year, I developed an eating disorder. I developed anorexia. I had gotten arrested when I was 13 for breaking and entering, and it kind of spiraled me into a severe depression. And that was one of the ways I kind of punished myself, was to didn't eat. And I ran 2 hours a day and I weighed 100 pounds. And for me, being able to come out of that, and I didn't talk to anyone about it. I felt embarrassed to talk to my parents. My parents were super stern. I told one friend in high school. She immediately told the guidance counselor, called me into her office. I was embarrassed, so I just kept it a secret. And what allowed me to come out of that was actually learning about nutrition and exercise so I could kind of overcome that emotional side of things and be healthy. That's why I actually became a coach to begin with. Now, the reason I focus so much on women in menopause, which is unexpected for a man to do that, is because when I first started helping people in my demographic, it was all women over 50. In fact, kind of an embarrassing thing to admit, but the health club I worked at, the nickname was the Cougar Den, okay, because all the members were women over 40 and 50. So I just thought these were normal things. And when I got started, I was a little arrogant. I thought, oh, this is easy. And all my clients were losing weight. And I had one woman come into my office one day when I was eating lunch. And she was working out hard, but she was about 40, 50 pounds overweight. And she introduced herself as Ashley. And I said, yeah, what's going on? And she said, well, your clients always seem to get results. I've tried everything and I can't lose weight to save my life. And in my 20-something-year-old mind, this was a while ago, I thought, okay, obviously you're just eating too much and not exercising enough. Just cut the calories and it'll be fine. So I said, yeah, I can help you. Well, we started working together, and after a month, nothing happened. She didn't lose a single ounce. And she was crying and saying, I knew it. I told you. And I'm sitting there going, oh God, everything I thought I knew, I don't know. I was like considering giving up the profession. Like it was just a blow to my ego and to myself. Well, I looked at her and I said, look, I don't know what's going on here, but I will work with you for free until we figure this out. And I mean, she hung in there months and months and months. And I was researching. I mean, I was beating her up an hour a day. She was eating 1,200 calories. Nothing would move. We tried everything. Low carb. It was Atkins back then, South Beach, grapefruit diet. I mean, you name it. Even the 100 extra, water a day, the whole gamut. Okay, this is when I finally, through my research, it was like I figured out what was going on. It's something called repressed metabolic syndrome, where what had happened, and this happens to a lot of women, is they too many diets and too much exercise actually, and they actually turn off their own metabolism. They repress it, and then the body switches to gaining fat and burning muscle, and so the more they try to lose weight, the worse it gets. So I come back and tell Ashley, I figured it out. I sit down with her, I say, we're going to have to eat more and exercise less, And she goes, there's no way I'm going to do that. I'm going to gain weight if I do that. I mean, this is not going to work. Because every time what would happen is she would lose like 3, 4, 5 pounds, but then gain it back and end up gaining like a total of 10 pounds each year. Okay, long story short, I got her to agree to it. 12 weeks later, she lost 36 pounds. And she was looking at me like, what the heck just happened? Well, what I'd done is there's a simple 3-step process you can do to reset the metabolism, reactivate the body's natural fat burning mechanism, the right hormones, the right enzymes, so that your body starts cranking. Well, I thought, holy cow, if this worked for Ashley, how would it work for my normal clients who aren't struggling, but yet they're cutting calories because that's what we're taught? They're starving. They have cravings. They're tired all the time. So I went to them and I said, hey, you got to try this thing. And then wham, their results all cranked up. And they said, what the heck is this? Is unbelievable. And that's when I knew I was on to something. And over the last, it's been about 17 years since then, I've been perfecting and perfecting. But that's really how I got into it. And it was amazing.
I love the story. And thank goodness for Ashley, right? She shifted everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I was curious about. Even in the last, for as long as you've been working with women, has this, the formula that you've been implementing over the years on hundreds of women, has it shifted or tweaked? Have you seen anything change over the last, I don't know, has it been 10 years or so?
This was about 17 years ago, actually.
Okay.
And I would say that it's been thousands of women. And there's a couple things that have changed. One is that more women than ever are experiencing gut issues, thyroid issues, oftentimes from low carb, high fat diets. They're also experiencing weird autoimmune and inflammation issues. This has a lot to do with some of the types of foods they're eating. And it's very confusing, to be honest with you. And I've learned these things over the years through trial and error of being able to be in the trenches and working with so many women. But what I'll say is some of the diets today are so extreme. Keto is one of them. I also not a proponent of fasting. I think this can really cause a lot of detrimental side effects, especially for women over 50. And these are breaking down a woman's body even further, and it's opening them up to get some of these weird symptoms and chronic issues. So in that regard, it's changed. However, in the regard of some of the applications that I've learned to reverse this repressed metabolic syndrome, that has not changed. In fact, I have refined it over the last 17 or so years, but when you do it right, not only will you crank up your metabolism, you can reset your thyroid, boost those hormones, reset your leptin and adiponectin, even your cortisol and your insulin will balance out. And in many cases, in about 8 to 9 weeks of working with women who are perimenopausal and menopausal, their other hormones will balance, their estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And this has a lot to do with the adrenal glands and how they work when a woman goes into menopause.
I want to speak because I'm curious. I want to go in a little bit into, because I would say that the uptick in autoimmunity, in inflammation, the gut issues, I have to believe that those are definitely putting a wrench in things. And then obviously, declining hormones and whatnot. And as particularly cortisol that you had mentioned. So, I find that so many women come into perimenopause and into menopause with deregulated stress response systems and definitely cortisol issues, usually more cortisol spilling out than less. Eventually we can burn it all out. And then you've got low levels of cortisol. And that's kind of like a further state of deregulation. I don't always necessarily see food moving the needle there, but I know that movement is. And so I know a part of the program that you would mention is like, one, not working out as hard and eating a little bit more.
Mhm.
One of the things I think you have mentioned over time is that a lot of women come to you and they are over working out and burning themselves out in that way. And so what are some of your recommendations, particularly around movement, that you have found to make a profound difference for women?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just so you know, one of the key mistakes that people make is the exercise or movement piece has to be in sync with the nutrition piece. So a lot of people will do an exercise protocol, but then the nutrition is off, or vice versa. And so not only are women that I see over exercising, but they are under eating. And I've seen that nutrition can absolutely move the needle. There's certain hormones that if you can get them at the right level through food, will offset cortisol, balance that out, and de-stress. Now, with the movement piece, I never recommend, I'm an anti high intensity interval training guy and high intensity guy. My clients, they don't work out more than about 30 minutes a day. They're doing things like walking, a little bit of resistance training, but not hard, not intense. And my typical client will lose 20 to 30 pounds of body fat in a 12-week period. These are women over 50, in many cases, and even in their 60s. And I've had women in their 70s. Now, does it work for women in their 30s and 40s? Yeah, like miraculously. And unfortunately, if women did this in their 20s, they wouldn't have any of these issues. But who's thinking about this in their 20s? I mean, it just doesn't hit. But what we're doing here is optimizing the body and balancing everything. We're putting the body in a very special environment. It's called the thermogenic state. This is where the body shifts. Your metabolism, you can reset that at any age. Now, the studies have shown that age does not impact metabolism. It's other things, mostly eating and activity. So you can reset your metabolism. And when you speed up that metabolism, you can activate your body's natural God-given fat burning mechanism. This is a series of chemical reactions that need to occur to create this environment. This is what we're all born with, and it's raging when we're younger. But because of the different things that we do over the years, we shut it down. So now you're burning more because you have your metabolism high, and you're burning it from fat. The activity is the least important piece. There's three pieces, and the activity is, believe it or not, the least important. But this is what people put all their emphasis in. Exercise, they dabble in nutrition, never even consider things like mindset and how that impacts the body. And this is why they either don't get great results or they can't keep their results. Okay.
I love that. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I know there's a big movement right now. I mean, nutrition is always to me the foundational piece, but there's a lot of, those, but nutrition to me, controlling inflammation is such a big part of cellular energy or energy metabolism. But I know that there's a lot of movement right now around, working out, maintaining muscle mass as the fountain of youth. And so I see we're all kind of moving back to, and I think lifting weights, I don't want to be frail as an older woman. I want to be able to maintain power and strength. But yeah, I do see a movement more towards working out again, heavier working out. I know that when I started walking more, definitely I felt a lot better, and I felt like I was losing more weight. I wasn't bullying myself into the gym. And so
Right.
we're talking to you years ago, and I was bullying myself into submission and realizing I wasn't seeing the results, let me tell you. And so I have that fine balance of the two. I just wanted to speak into that because I know that the cortisol piece is a big player here. And it's often because we are kind of bullying ourselves into submission and still not getting the results that we want. I know that in terms of the foundational kind of piece here is the nutrition. And I do want to get into that a little bit because I know everyone's like, well, then what is it, Stu? And so let's talk about it.
Well, let me explain what we did with Ashley first, and I can give you example after example. Ashley, I said I was beating her up an hour a day. Then she'd go and do cardio. She was working out 90 minutes a day, eating maybe 1,200 calories and watching it like a hawk. This is what we're taught to do. And most coaches, they never get past this, unfortunately. And if anyone tells you, oh, it's just calories in, calories out, run away. Your body is the most magnificent organism in the whole universe. And we have thousands and thousands of different chemical reactions occurring every second. If someone simplifies it or, reduces it to calories in, calories out, they don't know what they're talking about. It's so much more complex. We pulled Ashley down to 45 minutes from an hour and a half and increased her food by 50%. And that's when she was able to lose weight. And it goes against everything anyone ever says. I've told other coaches and they say, you're lying. That's not true. And I've had client after client. I had another client named Lachlan who she was, again, like you said, bullying herself. She had to set goals by registering for mini triathlons and marathons because that was the only way she could keep herself able to exercise. She was doing an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. Again, meticulously tracking calories. This was before I met her. Her husband didn't like being around her at the time because she was a raging you-know-what. Her hormones were all out of whack. She was losing her hair, and we did the same thing. We cranked down the exercise to 30 minutes. She had a panic attack. I mean, she was like, Stu, I can't do that. You don't understand. It's going to work. And she really trusted me. We boosted her food up. And all of a sudden she said, oh my gosh, I'm in a good mood. My weight's just falling off. Her hormones leveled out. I mean, she even started her period again because she had actually started reproducing the hormones. I mean, it was really miraculous. Have had other clients who they went and got their hormones checked. Their testosterone, for example. I had a woman here in Colorado. Her testosterone was undetectable. And in 12 weeks, it was back into normal range without hormone replacement therapy. And the doctors were at a loss as to how that was possible. But what happens is your body is designed to regulate itself. Our bodies can heal. When you put them in the right environment, they heal themselves. Weight training or resistance training is an important aspect, but with women, especially in perimenopause and menopause, you have to be in balance because if you tip over that tipping point, now it's too much and that'll send the body in the wrong direction. If you don't do enough, it's too little and you're not going to reap the benefit. So it's like a Goldilocks principle. You want to be in that sweet spot, and everyone's a little different. Now, going back to something we were talking about, like a gut issue or an autoimmune or inflammation, a lot of women need to go through a healing phase. It doesn't take long, 4 weeks maybe. And then their body becomes more able to handle some of these stressors, healthy stressors, exercise. Whereas before, it had very little room to. And this is exactly what happens when you optimize the body. The body is more capable of handling stress. It's more capable of balancing itself and healing itself. So not only do you lose body fat very quickly, but you feel amazing. And the longevity aspect, the anti-aging aspect, it's off the charts.
I want to dig into some of the nutritional pieces a little bit and focus. I know one of the things you're talking about is fasting, and fasting is to me very concerning too, if we're trying to maintain our metabolic health and we're trying to maintain our muscle, because again, I think it just puts us in a breakdown. It can put us in a breakdown state, and that isn't necessarily moving in the right direction. And so I would love for you to focus on breakfast. I know that breakfast is controversial. Here we are in this world where it very much is. And how do you navigate women through breakfast? Do you have them, at least it's obviously an overnight fast. Women aren't eating in the middle of the night here.
Right.
So they're having dinner, then they're having breakfast, I'm guessing.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So look, there's a couple things. When you're fasting or you're under eating or over exercising, and even if you're cutting out carbs, this can happen. There's a cascade that happens. It's 5 things. First response, this, your cortisol levels jump. And this is accompanied by an adrenaline jump, which releases epinephrine and norepinephrine. And if not checked quickly, this leads to the adrenal fatigue, where it's a bad name for it, but those levels stay high. And this affects gut health because it takes all the blood flow away from the organs and the digestive system. This is not good. Now, cortisol is in one of those Goldilocks hormones. A little bit helps you burn fat. If it's too high too often, it just totally zaps you. It prevents you from burning fat. The second thing that happens, your metabolism reduces. This is, again, you just mentioned this. Soon as the body thinks it's starving, all it says is, oh, no problem. We're just going to shut down the metabolism, lower it so we can survive on less. No big deal. It's great for survival. And that's, remember, first and foremost, what human beings are built for is survival, but it's terrible for fat loss. The third thing that happens, you skip breakfast, you're going to create very unstable blood sugar, very unstable. And that is one of the worst things for fat loss. It's not good for hormones either. What you want is stable blood sugar in a very specific range all day long. Now, does this raise insulin levels? A little bit. But guess what? Insulin has also gotten a bad rep. And if you have the right amount of insulin, not only does it help you burn fat, it also helps you build muscle. The problem is if your blood sugar is unstable, you're going to get these insulin spikes. That causes the fat storage. Okay.
Agree. Well, insulin is in a way a de facto fat storage hormone, especially if you're moving into a more resistant state. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yes, insulin is just like cortisol, vital to survival.
Absolutely. And insulin, if you combine the right foods together, insulin creates or is part of something called the muscle activation system or the muscle delivery system, where it's responsible for getting key nutrients into your muscles so that you don't lose muscle. All right, that's the third side effect. Now, if you're fasting and you're waiting all day to eat and you're only having 1 or 2 meals, and this is still argued about, and I just don't understand this. If you eat too big of a meal, you are going to go over something called your nutrition threshold, which means you can't absorb it all at once. I don't know how people can argue about this because it's wholeheartedly 100% agreed upon with all vitamins and minerals. If you take too much vitamin C, you pee out the excess. If you take other fat-soluble vitamins, they become toxic because they get stuck in the body. And food is very similar. If you eat too much of anything at one sitting, whether it's carbs, proteins, fats, or all of the above, your body will digest it. You'll absorb what you can, and the excess will get stored as fat. plain and simple. So people that are eating one massive meal or two massive meals, this is going to be a major side effect. And we haven't even gotten into protein synthesis and how quickly the body uses it, and then it starts dropping. So if you're waiting all day to eat, you're burning off muscle that way too. And lastly, if you have too big of a meal, this will cause an insulin spike. Go look and see what sumo wrestlers do. You know what they do? They only eat one meal a day because they know that that's the easiest way to put on weight, and they're trying to get as big as possible, as quickly as possible. And they've been doing this for centuries.
All right, so balancing blood sugar, right? And not having these big mega meals, especially probably later at night when we are naturally more insulin resistant. Like
exactly.
maybe that's not the move. So if balancing blood sugar, and I love that we're talking about muscle protein synthesis, how important that is. What is your thought on, are we eating enough protein? I feel like we're undernourished there.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy about that because some people argue it's rough on the kidneys. And, I've had some women who thought their total daily intake should be about 50 grams, and that might be what I eat per meal, but I'm obviously a guy. But how much does a woman need? Well, I would say on average today, now we live in a world that's different than it was in the 1930s. Women didn't do as much. There wasn't a lot of stress, I'm not saying that women didn't do anything. I mean, it was just different. Okay. Women are working full-time jobs. Okay. Yeah. They're taking care of kids. They're taking care of their husbands. They're taking care of their parents. There's a lot that they're doing. We're getting steps. We're exercising like we've never exercised before. Women never used to go to the gym in the 30s and pump iron and lift weights and do Pilates and yoga for an hour. So probably now the minimum amount of protein a person should get is probably around 100 grams a day. That would be a kind of the minimum. And most of my clients tend to get a little bit more than that if they're women over 50. Now, the other thing, and you know this just as well as anybody, believe it or not, as you get older, your protein requirements go up slightly. And a lot of people have that backwards. They think, well, I probably don't need as much because my metabolism is slowing down. Only if you're doing things wrong. If you're doing things right, your metabolism will not slow down.
I love it. Yeah, it was good. That's where I'm landing as well. So two big things I know that we agree. I think we agree on a lot of things, but the two things, one, balancing blood sugar, that we are, a lot of my clients that I'm working with too, my patients as well, they're landing at 40 grams, 50 grams, 60 grams, like literally half of what they're needing. And they're wondering why they're losing muscle and their metabolism isn't working and they're just putting on that belly fat. And so I'm glad that we're speaking in that. So when we're talking about evenly distributing protein as well, is protein a part of breakfast for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Look, there's 4 parts of nutrition, and this is something I've built and created. It's called the food quadrant. Okay. And there's what you eat. That's what I'm
trying to get to, Stu, is the food quadrant. Let's get to it.
Well, there's 4 pieces of nutrition. Okay. There's what you eat and how much you eat. And that's what 99.9% of the diets look at out there. They tell you calories, 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 calories. For God's sake, stop counting calories. That's from the 50s and 60s. Your body's more complex than that. Or they look at macros and then they don't even tell you what kind, or they don't even tell you that it matters. Get carbs. It doesn't matter where they come from. Are you kidding me? Okay, it absolutely matters because each type of carb, and there's 16 different types of carbs, 5 different types of proteins, 10 types of fats. It absolutely matters where they're coming from. Each one is going to have a very different chemical reaction on your body. So that's 50%. And it's probably more like 30%. The other side of the food quadrant says it's the timing of foods through the day. What do you eat in the morning versus the afternoon versus the evening? And most importantly, the combination of foods at each meal. Look, you could eat fruit, and that fruit is going to have the same effect on your body as a chocolate chip cookie. All right. Now you pair that fruit with a couple other foods, and you're going to change the entire chemical reaction. Instead of the body delivering those nutrients to your fat cells, they might now deliver it to your muscle cells. And not only will you not get any delivered to your fat cells, but that reaction will cause something called a thermogenic effect, which will actually cause you to burn fat. So this is why so many people get confused, is they're eating healthy foods, all organic, whole foods, but they're not eating correctly. They're not causing the right chemical reactions in their body. So they're still putting on weight. There's a big difference between eating healthy and eating correctly. And that's what I work with clients on, is how do you eat correctly to get your body to burn and burn and burn and burn so that you can eat a lot. You don't have to restrict. You don't have to restrict calories, and everything optimizes and balances. This is the big deal.
Yeah.
The timing is important because our bodies change. You mentioned one thing. Your insulin resistance absolutely changes through the day. So does your metabolic rate. So does your cortisol. So does your melatonin, and probably about 100 other things, your cellular respiration cycle, what your body's doing with oxygen versus carbon dioxide. So if you eat in sync with how your body changes through the day, this is like swimming downstream with the current. It's faster and easier. Okay, you're not fighting it. And I mean, look, I've had clients where they were eating all so super healthy. I had a client named Cheryl who had done keto and fasting and just no energy. She was in her 60s in Florida. She's active. She's a horticulturist. And you know what the doctor says to her? Well, welcome to menopause. And she said, BS. If this is menopause, I ain't doing it, you know? And I said, nah, because she wasn't eating enough. She was trying to follow what all these trends are saying. Oh, do the fasting and do the low carb. I mean, within 2 weeks, she said, Stu, I don't know what you've done to me, but I'm back to being the Energizer bunny. It was so bad, she told me she felt like she had lead weights on her legs when she woke up, and she couldn't get the roll of fat off her midsection. In 3 months, she lost over 18 pounds, and she got her energy back by eating more carbs. And she said, Stu, the stuff you teach is opposite of what everyone's saying today. I wouldn't have believed it would work. I would have laughed at you, but here I am, 18 pounds lighter, full of energy. I got a new lease on life in her 60s. This is how it works.
Well, I want to take in terms of food time, like timing of food, because obviously food is on the table, protein's on the table, carbs are on the table. Although, you know, that's the dirtiest word we're going to speak today is
Carbs like a 4-letter word now.
Exactly. So, and I know we've had conversations before, and I know that the timing of carbs can matter.
Oh, absolutely.
So when we're thinking about the timing of carbs, when we were thinking about bringing in carbs, are carbs carte blanche all day long? Are they just for breakfast? Are we just being strategic about pairing them?
It's a great question. First of all, you're always going to be strategic about pairing them because remember, of that food quadrant, the combination of foods is the most important.
Right.
Now, there's three main kinds of foods: protein, carbs, and fats. Now, I don't count vegetables as carbs, just so people out there watching know. When I say carbs, I'm talking about legit carbs: potatoes, rice, corn, peas, fruit, bread, you know, these types of things, oatmeal, grains. That's what I'm talking about. Vegetables are, in my opinion, in their own subcategory. But there's three main types of food: protein, carbs, and fat. And each one has a fat burning effect on the body. Well, protein has the highest. Okay.
Yes.
This is why everyone always gives it all the positive publicity. Ooh, okay. But our bodies aren't really designed to just live on only protein, although we've got a big carnivore push now. And a lot of people think that's the case. It isn't. Okay. Now, carbs have the second highest fat burning effect. Nobody talks about this. And they have a double fat burning effect because they can directly increase your T3 levels in your body through various mechanisms, certain organs that convert T4 to T3 and such. But fat has the least thermogenic or fat burning effect on the body. That doesn't mean you shouldn't eat it, but there's, like I said earlier, there's 5 proteins, there's 16 different types of carbs and 10 different types of fats. You got to get the right kind and you got to balance them correctly. Yeah, my clients are eating carbs all day long, all day with every single meal except one, the last meal of the day. Okay, that's where we strategically take out the carbohydrates because you don't need any most of the time. You're getting ready for bed. Your body's slowing down. You know, you have good glycogen reserves, so you just don't need as many. And we replace it with other nutrients that are going to really allow them to burn fat all night long when they're sleeping.
Yeah. And so I know veggies are not in that category. So veggies are, I'm going to guess they're a go for dinner.
I would assume so. Yeah. I think veggies are great.
Probably protein as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know in our conversations before, I know how you feel about keto and, you know, and mainly, like you said, in terms of being thermogenic, fat isn't the biggest thermogenic star here. And so I know for dinner in particular, is fat a part of the protein? We're not adding extra fat in per se.
That's a great question. Look, I'm sitting here explaining some concepts, but everyone's a little bit different. This, I think,
Right.
is the difference between, there's a lot of people that'll be watching this and they're watching a dozen different summits. They're listening to a dozen different podcasts. They can't quite crack the code. And this is because they're not getting something that's for them, or at least for them right now. Okay. I've seen it where keto, I've had worked with many clients who became insulin resistant because of keto.
Yeah.
What? How could that happen? Because when you're eating so much fat, your muscle cells kind of look like a golf ball. They have all these little dimples, which are insulin receptors. Okay. Too much fat can dull those. So now the insulin goes to connect with the muscle cell and it can't. Okay. It's like it can't get into that receptor. So what does it do? It goes and puts whatever it's got into the fat cells. This is a form of insulin resistance. Now, I have a client right now. Her name's Stacy. She's the teeniest, cutest little woman you've ever met. I think she's like 4'11". Okay. She weighs like 95 pounds. When she came to me, she weighed like 110. That's a big difference at that height. She was insulin resistant because of keto. She had tried it to help her blood sugar. It made it worse. So all the time we looked at, she had a continuous glucose monitor. When she was eating carbs and pairing it with the right foods, what we saw is her blood sugar would just be perfectly level all day long. Now, I remember I said there's 16 types of carbs. Certain carbs would spike her blood sugar. Other carbs, they wouldn't. But these are certain carbs that people say, never eat those. They're sugary. They'll cause terrible reactions in the body. Not the case. Now, the other thing which you have to remember is as she's eating these carbs, what's happening is we didn't just go from 0 to 100. Oh, I'll just eat carbs all day. I had somebody ask me once, so you're saying you could eat donuts all day? Come on, give me a break,
Those aren't carbs, that's poison.
Here's the weird thing about fats. Those will also spike your insulin. The difference is
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
they spike it later. There's something called the glycemic index, but there's also something called the insulin index. And that insulin index will show that many fats will spike your blood sugar at the 3-hour mark. This is why they're not on the glycemic index. The glycemic index only measures a 2-hour period. But the difference with the fats is they'll keep it elevated for longer than carbohydrates do. And so a lot of people doing keto, this is the other reason they'll become insulin resistant. So to answer your question, can you add fats? Maybe. It depends on what you're eating, depends on the person. I'll tell you a couple things. Don't add some of the typical fats that people are saying are good, all the unsaturated fats, and people are now over consuming the omega-6. That's not good either. They're getting all these fats from oils and nuts and seeds, and these are causing more inflammation. And that's why I said you have to understand the different types of fats. Years ago, everyone was afraid of saturated fats. Now research is coming out and people are saying, well, they're fine, they're good. Well, I don't know that that's the whole story. They're maybe not as bad for heart disease as we thought, but they can still contribute to that muscle insulin receptor dulling effect that I explained. So again, it's not just a permission to just eat all the fats you want because they're healthy. You've got to still get the right fats.
No, I agree with you. And, no matter how you get to insulin resistance, whether it's, overabundance of fats, especially inflammatory fats, or it's an overabundance of refined carbs and sugar, that at the end of the day, the number one risk factor for cardiovascular disease is insulin resistance.
Absolutely.
Or none.
Yeah.
I will say in my, I've taken a lot of your advice as well in terms of balancing my metabolic health. And one of the things that made the biggest difference for me really was increasing my protein. I just wasn't eating enough. I was bullying my way. I was following, the protocol that we all grew up with. But the other thing that made a big difference, especially from, my Mexican family, everyone's got diabetes, everybody. And so I had struggled with insulin resistance even at times where I didn't know that's what it was. I thought it was deregulated cortisol, which again lends to insulin resistance too.
Sure.
So there's that, but I blamed it on that. But when I really dialed my blood sugar across the board and focused on reducing inflammation in general, so eating foods that I felt were helping with inflammation, it really made a big difference. Like I don't have the exact formula of combinations, but how much of what you share is about kind of balancing out that blood sugar, and how much do you find that plays a role in helping to optimize our cellular energy?
That's a great question. So it's one thing, but one thing that I always stress is the body doesn't work in a vacuum,
No, absolutely.
And so, if all you're focused on is blood sugar, you're missing a dozen other things like leptin, adiponectin, some of the key enzymes that need insulin. If your blood sugar's too low, you won't get enough insulin. Okay. And that's not good either. The cortisol effect, the other hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, pregnenolone is a big one. Thyroid hormone is a big one. So while blood sugar is a component, and it should definitely not be ignored, everything needs to work in unison. And I feel like that's one of the bigger problems today. Unfortunately, we all pick our specialties, and a lot of people are so narrowed in on something. Like I've met people that only focus on leptin. Well, that's great, but you're missing so many other things that you can't just attack leptin in the body and then everything else leave it alone. You have to address everything. Blood sugar is a component. However, contrary to what a lot of people say, low blood sugar is all the time is not the answer. There are certain times you want elevated blood sugar. There are certain times you want elevated insulin. The key is understanding how to use it. It's like a double-edged sword. You can use it for good, you can use it for bad. Most people, they're not going to spend time trying to figure this out. They
No,
don't
I was
have
going to
time
say
to get
nobody.
they don't have time to get a physiology education. So they're just trying to figure out, well, what do I do? You need a quality expert who understands that people say, oh, cortisol is bad. No, no, no. Oh, insulin's bad. No, no hormone is bad. It's only bad when it's out of control. So the key is bringing all these things into the sweet spot so that your body functions the way it's designed to. And that's when all the magic happens.
I think one of the things you've learned in the last 17 years is there's definitely individualization
Oh,
depending
yeah.
on the other things, genetics and lifestyle. And
Well, your example, Mariza,
yeah,
Hispanics have a very much higher risk of developing insulin resistance.
yeah.
Every Hispanic, Latina that I've worked with has either been borderline or fully insulin resistant. Now you can reverse that pretty easily. All it takes is it just changes the rules of the game slightly. This is actually a real thing. So yeah, absolutely. To your point, it should be customized. It needs to be customized.
Yeah, exactly. And so I know that again, it is so confusing, Stu, as you know, and there's so much misinformation and so many of the women that are listening right now, listening to us are like, I'm just trying to get dinner on the table for my kids, and
Yeah.
so, and that's why I wanted to kind of bring up some of those more controversial points of like, well, what do I do about breakfast? So many women scared of doing breakfast or they're just doing coffee and collagen. And so would you just, and I know everyone's different, but just kind of brushstrokes of what would it look like to create a metabolically healthy, thermogenic driven breakfast so that I had a sense of like, at least I'm getting that meal right. I know I
Yeah.
got other meals to focus on, but I feel like that's the one that if we really muck that one up, we kind of set the tone for chaos down the road. Like
Sure.
I was told if you're drinking orange juice and eating bagels or muffins or refined carbs in the morning without anything helping to balance that out, that blood sugar spike you're on the roller coaster. So how do we at least set the tone, set the table for a good metabolic day starting in our morning, even
Sure.
when we're trying to get our kids to school and we're trying to do all the things and we're just trying to take care of ourselves?
Well, you definitely want protein. I would say you want protein at every meal. Okay. If I could break it down maybe into 3 or 4 general points, these are like the commandments here. Protein at every meal would be number one. That's the foundation that everything is built on. Even if you missed some carbs, in certain cases, the body can convert protein to glucose. So you could still eke it out, certainly that way. It's not good. It's not necessarily optimal or altogether healthy, but at least you're not completely deprived. So that's number one, protein at every meal. Number two, I have found over the 20 years I've been doing this, most people will not be able to get the results they're looking for with less than 4 meals in a day. Okay. Optimally might be 5, but for some people that's not realistic. So 4 or 5 seems to be the sweet spot where you're getting everything balanced, your meal size is correct, you're able to dose things through the day so your body never really goes into the plummets and spikes. Okay. Yeah. So that would be number two. Okay. Now, Breakfast. You're obsessed with breakfast, Mariza, and
Well,
I
I'm
understand.
telling you, Stu, I find that that's like, it can all go downhill if
Yeah,
you don't set
breakfast
the
will
tone.
definitely set the tone for the day.
Yeah.
So if you get the protein first, now I said there's 5 different types of protein, and this is key too. There's complete proteins, incomplete proteins, high quality, low quality. There's phosphate rich, which will attack the thyroid if you get too much phosphate. So you got to be careful, but get enough protein. That's step one. Number two, you want carbs at breakfast. Why? Because that's when your body is going to be able to assimilate them the best, and you're going to use them all day long when you're taking the kids around and dealing with all the stressors and da da da. Your brain uses glucose for energy, okay? And if you don't eat the carbs, the body's going to turn something else into glucose to feed the brain. This is incredibly stressful on the body. And I would say, my favorite carbs in the morning are probably fruit. And you know what? If you get the right kind of orange juice, you can even use that. And if you do it right, even that would be wonderful. Okay. Remember, I told you about Stacy had the CGM because she was insulin resistant. Believe it or not, when she would do the orange juice, that her blood sugar actually and sometimes would drop too low because different
Mhm.
types of sugars go to different places in the body. So this is why it's important to know the different types. Okay. And then look, if you want to have some healthy vegetables, that's fine too. So if you're making an omelet, let's say you're making like an egg white omelet or something. Now I say egg white omelet because the amount of eggs a person would need to get enough protein is more than they think, more
Yeah,
than they
yeah.
realize.
It's
And
a,
by
it's like
that
a, it's
time,
like a
you've gotten all this
six egg
extra fat.
omelet.
Yeah. So you could do like a spinach omelet, a mushroom spinach omelet, something that's really good and healthy, and have it with a bowl of fruit. That's a wonderful breakfast. I'll give you a recipe my clients love for breakfast. Egg white fried rice. They mix egg whites and fry up some brown rice, and they top it with some coconut aminos. And some of them will sprinkle, because they're, very adventurous. They'll sprinkle some like beef jerky or turkey jerky on the top, give it some texture. They'll mix in some vegetables with it. These are fun, delicious meals that my clients have come up with over the years that they love. And that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, most meals should be very balanced and very similar in size, with certain exceptions. This would be timing around your exercise or different things, activities that you may be doing through the day. So yeah, breakfast is very important, but every meal is important. I don't want anyone to think that breakfast is only the important meal they should focus on.
The one of the last questions I have, I'm going to take you to dinner. I know we're talking about timing and all the things. And one of the things that I noticed that when I ate a little bit earlier, I not only felt better, I felt like I slept better. I just did better overall. I felt like I was able to maintain weight. Do you keep your clients within a window? Like, is it you ideally dinner before 8 or,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Some people say 7, some people say
I say
6.
7. I was just curious where you
Um,
landed.
it's more for me, it's more to do with when they're going to bed. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Because I have some clients, I go, when are you going to, they go to bed at midnight. Okay. They've just always done that. They wake up at 8 or 9. That's just their schedule. Well, that person would be different than someone who goes to bed at 9:30 or 10. Okay. Now, there is some benefits of going to bed earlier, how your body detoxifies itself, et cetera, et cetera. That's beyond the scope of this talk. But with that being said, without getting too critical or technical, I like 2.5 to 3 hours before bed so the body can pretty much be mostly digested. And then your body actually can do some detoxing and certain things and burn off some extra body fat at night.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious. I wanted to see where you landed there because I know a lot of women, again, scheduling wise, I like 3 hours before bed. And yes, I know that some people just go to bed at midnight. This is what they do.
Mhm.
And, we know that there are benefits of going to bed a little bit earlier than that. I know that if I go to bed at midnight, that is definitely not my constitution. Like I am not
Yeah.
going to feel good. And my son does not wait until 8 o'clock to get up in the morning. So there's that too. Okay. And the other thing in terms of just the last little question I have for
Sure.
you, yeah, obviously nutrition, we've been talking deeply about the foundation of why that's so important. Are there other lifestyle interventions that you feel are really non-negotiable for women in this life phase?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Other maybe commandments or something like that.
Mhm.
Well, so the food is absolutely critical. That'll drive probably 80% of the results. Mindset is actually even more important than nutrition. And I'm not just talking about like motivation and meditation and things like that. There's so much your mind can directly impact your body, your own physiology. For example, you wake up from that nightmare, your whole physiology has changed. Okay. Your blood pressure, your cortisol, your adrenaline, your heart rate, your breathing, your sweating. And that was just an unconscious visualization. Think about what you can do if you understand how to use mindset alongside some of the physical things. You can absolutely change your body. Look, women now more than ever are suffering from gut issues, autoimmune, thyroid, and inflammation is always the root cause of everything. And there's many reasons for inflammation. I think one of the biggest problems that women have right now, especially when you're over 50, they're not eating enough. They're not eating enough carbohydrates. They're doing extreme diets like keto and fasting. And this is really inhibiting these parts of their body, the gut, namely, and also the liver and the thyroid. They all work synergistically. If you can fix those things and stop following just the latest trend after trend, you can repair your body. And I feel like this is going to be so vital for women's health, especially perimenopause and menopause, to get through it joyfully, so that women don't think menopause is a 4-letter word either, I mean, recreate the dialogue, recreate the paradigm around this. You can absolutely have vitality and be young and youthful and look amazing. And this is what it's all about. You've just got to understand the body and get it all connected, all working together.
When I think the side benefit too, Stu, to the work that you do with your clients is that it really does optimize cellular energy too.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's everything. I mean, if we can get that working, women who, again, wake up feeling like there's just lead in their legs, have that energy. I think
Yeah.
I call it the energy, like being an energizer bunny again.
Yeah.
And I think every woman who's listening to this is like, I would kill for that again.
I have clients whose temperature is in the 96s. Okay.
That's low.
The government here, or whatever governing body it is, has reduced the body temperature recommendation from 98.6 to 97.8 or something like this. This is not good. This does not mean that's healthy. It means our temperatures are falling. This is incredibly dangerous because there's certain bacteria that can't live in our body when it's at 98.6. This is all cellular respiration and cellular metabolic energy. And this is absolutely critical. And one of the benefits that will happen when you put your body in this thermogenic state, and it's fun to watch my clients when their temperatures go back up into the 97s, 98s. And this is out, and mine has too. For years I was at 97.7. Why? Because I test everything, and I tried stupid keto, okay, and I tested it and it wreaked havoc with my body, and I'm a man. And it took me years to get the temperature back up. Eating foods that I was told not to eat, like orange juice, for example, and certain fruits and things that people say it's too sugary. Well, yes, but sometimes, and if you do it right, that will absolutely crank up your cellular respiration and crank up things like your thyroid function. It's really miraculous.
Well, I wanted to just end with a couple of the free yummy gifts that you have for us. You're just
Yes.
bringing it over here. So can you share a little bit about what you got?
Yes, I'm going to do something very special here. If you're listening here, you've struck gold. Okay. You're going to hit the lottery here. So if you go to StuSchaefer.com/thrive, you're going to get a brand new, I just wrote this specifically for your audience. It's a menopause weight loss guide. You're going to get that for free. You're going to get our fat loss masterclass for free. You're also going to get our quiz. You can take our free quiz now. This will tell you if you're putting your body into a fat burning state or not. And you're going to get my special 7-day fat loss kickstart guide, where I send you an email every day for 7 days. And I break down specifically steps you can take right now in menopause, but also even if you're a little bit younger, you have an advantage to really crank your body into this fat burning state.
I love it.
So StuSchaefer.com/thrive.
Stu Schaefer, I love it. I love the Thrive. And we're going to have it as gifts. We have gifts for this beautiful event. We're going to make sure you guys have access to that. And I just want to say thank you, Stu, for coming on and answering all my questions. Even when I was a little obsessive over some of them, I'm like, give me the answer.
I'm happy.
It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.